you take him to another planet, to a mothership? How did they communicate with... Can you tell me what they look like? Can you tell me how many of them there were? Were you given food?
But the teachers are alive. They're not books. They are the very living essences of nature itself.
What a strange person.
Unbelievably powerful supercomputer that's running our reality, and we don't have a clue as to how to operate it.
So when maybe you or somebody else creates an AGI system and you get to ask her one question, what would that question be?
What's outside the simulation?
Say in your mind, say to yourself, I am more than my physical body. Because I am more than physical matter. I can perceive that which is greater than the physical world.
Howdy, 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 howdy.
Do not know all the answers to the questions about reality. Do not claim to know the ultimate truth about life. I seek that which has been made hidden. As a part of a family of explorers of consciousness. I'm the void walker.
Welcome to Lighting the Void.
Broadcasting from New York, upstate, near the Great Lakes, it's Lighting the Void, and I'm your host, Joe Rupin. We are live on the Fringe FM, KTLK Digital Broadcasting. It is March the 17th on into the 18th, so it's actually March the 18th. It's midnight here on the East Coast, and I wonder, did all of you people in the States, did you get your money? Did you get your government check? And what are you spending it on right now? Huh? Are you really stimulating the economy? I don't suppose I'm going to get a check because I'm an entrepreneur. I don't know if that even matters. And speaking of which, I really appreciate the new patrons and the people that upgraded to the Patreon stuff. And the patience that you guys have with me, because I promise you, if all I had to do was focus on lighting the void, I would probably be doing Patreon stuff every single day. But the Astral Journal stuff is fun that we do in there. We do that every now and then. Also the tarot and astrology stuff. And then we're working on or Rohan and I are working on behind the scenes, the Deep Void project for the basic membership too. So you guys are going to get some more stuff with that. So also want to thank James Salcedo for his contribution, Catalina for sending a contribution, and Jasmine, and some dark chocolate that I got in the mail. And if you want to send something in the mail, that's quite all right too. You can send it to P.O. Box 272, West Bloomfield, New York, 14585. It's good because I have sugar cravings, and so that dark chocolate's actually it's not bad for you. It's actually pretty good for you, I hear. So tonight we're going to get into some really cool stuff. Telekinesis and focused intention. We're going to have guests come on here shortly. Sean McNamara. I hope I said his McNamara. That's right. Sean McNamara is going to be on shortly. Really cool YouTube videos I watched. You can go to his website too at mindpossible.com. Like, is it possible to move stuff with your mind? And according to these experiments, that I watched on YouTube, it's entirely possible to move matter with your mind. And this show is definitely all about the human potential. I mean, this is what we want to talk about. This is what we want to explore. Not just explore consciousness, but what is the human potential? Like, what are we really capable of? Fascinating, actually, watching these videos that he had. So when we can affect the physical world around us with our mind, like, is that possible? It's beyond the law of attraction. We're talking about real telekinesis here. What some people might be or consider it comic book stuff, right? It doesn't mean that the physical world is actually within us. Are we a part of it? And is the power of intention based in feeling rather than just thought alone? Now, you guys know this, right? The way, the magical approach to this, and I would say even the mystical and mystical scientific approach, is that thought is the target, emotion is the amplifier, and all of the symbols that you put around this stuff is simply stacking the deck to increase the probability of manifestation. However, instant physical manifestation is something else entirely. And do we use emotion? Like, if telekinesis is a real thing, which I believe it is, do we use emotion to do that as well? All right. And how do we integrate experiences which we are told are impossible? And I'm going to kind of take this, this Telegram thing just won't stop beeping. I apologize about that. I'm going to take this to a different level. I don't know how many of you get tired of being told who you are, or like your family does it, your friends do it when you grow up, society does it. They always try to put you in a box. And I think this kind of stuff, and I know it doesn't seem relatable, but I guarantee you that it is. I think this kind of stuff is what starts narrowing us down and putting us into a box of categories. I mean, imagine a box that has lines inside that and lines inside of that, and it's just categorically just walling you into this little space. And eventually you lose all your power if you start believing this stuff or telling these things in your mind or these narratives that happen. But I feel like if you can just free your mind from believing anything about yourself or saying that you know anything, period, you can really tap into the power of the mind, which is kind of like meditation, I guess. But I've tried this thing before. I know it sounds wackadoo, but I've tried bending stuff with my mind. I've tried focusing on things until it moved. And I think it actually worked a couple times. Maybe I didn't have the formula down right, but I watched Sean's videos on YouTube, is what he's doing. And it was amazing to me. Now, some of the people that were in these experiments, he did a documentary film on this on his YouTube channel, by the way. But some of these people that did these experiments were already healers, Reiki healers, things like that. But you could definitely see how it worked really well for some, and then others it didn't work so well. Look, it doesn't matter, right? If you can bend a fork or if you can move like a gum wrapper. If you can literally move something with your mind, then we need to grow that. We need to figure out what's going on there. Telekinesis, to come out, it's also incredibly brave, if you ask me, to come out and tell people and to really make a stand for this, that, hey, we can move things with our mind. Our mind is more powerful than you think, and really try to push this subject. But he also talks about lucid dreaming and out-of-body experiences, spoon bending, what's called vagus nerve stimulation, things like that. So I'm really, really excited about getting into this conversation tonight. Also had a pretty interesting session. If you guys haven't signed up to the Helio School with Andy Cooper, I had an interesting, like one of my first NLP sessions there today. And I got to tell you, it was really long and extensive. It was, but I can't really get into detail about it. It's not stuff you really want to say on the radio show, but it really helped me. It really did show me the power of the mind too, as well. And I'll tell you something weird that happened that never happened to me before. Give me just a second here. Do you know how you lose memories, right? The older you get, you start losing memories about things that happened to you when you were little. Of course, I don't remember being born. I don't even remember being 2 or 3 years old or anything like that. But as I started going through this process, and keep in mind, the Helios school is based in a magical system too, but they take you through NLP training before you start your magical initiation. I think it's awesome. It really is. Anyways, so as I'm going through this, I started really like going through my past and timeline and stuff. I started having memories that popped up from my childhood, even all the way back to when I was a toddler, that I guess I'd stored in my brain. I mean, I thought I totally forgot about these things. Like, I was going through all these different trauma things, right? And little bitty things to kids we think are small are actually really big. They're traumatizing for kids. And I remember I was at my cousin's house, Jennifer and Christy, and I was playing softball with them outside. And I was always in trouble when I was a kid. I was always in trouble. If I wasn't getting a paddling at school, I was getting my butt whipped by my dad, and I was always in trouble. Always. And so I never really thought that I deserved anything good when I was a little kid. But I remember I started playing with these berries. I guess these berries that you just pick off of bushes. There were at the side of my Uncle Ted's house. They had these bushes with berries on them. They also had honeysuckle. And I would just pull them off of the sticks. And this memory came back to me. I totally forgot about it. Where I would grab the limb and pull it towards me, and all the leaves would start swirling around and make a little look like a rose thing. But what was happening, what happened by doing that is I was also grabbing these poison berries or whatever these things were, and they were busting all over my hand. And so inside of my hand, they were just solid purple. But for some reason, I still do that to this day as an adult. If I go up to a bush, I'll grab the stick and just wrap my fingers around it and pull it from the bottom all the way to the top. And it makes like a perfect golden ratio spiral, so it looks like a flower when you get done with it. I don't know if anybody else does that. But anyways, so my father pulls into my Uncle Ted's house in his old blue Chevrolet with the white Bronco thing on it, which I forgot about the white Bronco. I forgot so much stuff. This was really cool that happened today. And he bought me something, which really didn't happen too often, like just a gift out of nowhere. If it wasn't my birthday or he wasn't buying something that I needed for school, usually didn't get too many gifts, right? And so he bought me a white BMX bike. And when I was a kid, man, I loved riding my bike. I loved it. It was like my favorite thing to do. And the first thing he did was he goes, I got you something. Look in the back of the truck and get it. And it was really heavy. I remember I couldn't get it out. So he got out and he took the bike out, and it was white. It was white with black spokes. It was really cool looking. It had a clear chain guard too. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I'm sure he bought it from Walmart or something, but I didn't care. It was a brand new bicycle. And I got on it, and he said, once you get on it, ride it. And I got on the bike and just took off riding, right? And he said, wait, stop. And it's crazy how much I remember this too, how I have forgotten about this for like 30 years, and the entire thing come flooding out. It just all come flooding out. Anyways, he told me to come back. And he said, open up your hands, and I opened my hands. Now, I don't want you guys to think my father is a maniac or anything, but I just remember the trauma triggered this, right? And he saw that I had these grape poison berries things all over my palms. And then I put my hands on this brand new bike without even thinking, because I was an emotional kid. So I just did things based on my emotions. I didn't think logically before I did it. You know, I was like 8 years old. And he really started yelling at me. Now, he didn't whip me or anything like he usually did, but he really started yelling at me. So I went from this really excited, thank you, Dad, crying type thing to ashamed of myself, feeling guilty because I didn't wash my hands before I got on the bike. And then I remember him telling me not to cry about it because that's what babies do, and there ain't nothing to cry about. And it was that one of the first experiences, and I was still trying to go back further, you know, but it just opened up all after that. I started having all of these memories of that, what do you call it? That, I'm trying to think of the name for it. It's not just sadness. Like when you're really happy and then someone waits until you're really happy and joyful and got your hopes up about it and then just yanks it right back away from you. That back and forth, crazy feeling of, I deserve this, I'm going to have this, and then it just feels like you don't. Now, I started realizing that happened in my life, not just for my father, but that happened in my life in a lot of different ways. I started going through lots of different memories where for a minute things would happen, even if I worked for them especially, where I would have this moment, this like rocky moment of happiness, and it would be taken away from me. Now, I don't know why that happened, but I think it had to do with, I think the universe or whatever you want to call it was doing it to teach me how to handle my emotions, since I was going to be that way anyways. So my point in telling that story is this memory that I just told you is in pretty good detail. I had forgotten about for 30 years or more. And there were some other memories too that I remembered. So I'm not so sure when someone says, well, I forget, I don't remember being born, I don't remember this, I don't remember whatever. I'm not so sure that our brains don't store it. Like our brains are obviously not being utilized. Well, let's just say our minds, we'll call it that, not the organ, but our minds are not being utilized the way that they could be. And a lot of that is because our emotions are ruling us in a lot of ways too, but we're fixated on what society has put upon us. And I know I seem to go on these weird rants about it, but I get really excited about this stuff because I believe that understanding the esoteric, the occult, the hidden things about life, nature, and consciousness, and really understanding what the emotions are and what our mind really is and other forces that we have in our life, learning to come to understand these things is going to unlock the real potential of humans in a way where we don't depend on anybody anymore. And I mean for anything. I'm not saying I'm not talking about like love and family and things like that. That's a necessity, actually. You should have those things in your life. And if you don't, I'm really sorry. But I'm talking about all of the systems and all of the places and that we go to for advice and everything that we lean on for support is simply because we don't know how to handle our own minds. And we don't know how to handle the responsibility of the power that we have that's within us. It's kind of scary, actually, once you start unlocking it. And then you start realizing I'm responsible for my reality. And I'm responsible for remembering certain things and dealing with my emotions that even when I was a child, I had nothing to do with. It wasn't my fault. But as an adult, you're still responsible for healing from that and moving on, especially if you're responsible for other people. So I don't know what we're going to discuss tonight, but I got a feeling that we're going to really dive into the mind and talk about just how freaking powerful it is. I'm on the verge of like almost telling you what happened. I might tell you what happened today, but this NLP session that I had today was probably one of the most eye-opening and fulfilling growth type things I've ever had in my life. And it's funny because when you look at neuro-linguistic programming, things like that, there are people that absolutely demonize this stuff. And I find that ironic because some of the things that can really heal us, and it's not that hard actually, those things that can really heal us, make us happy, are demonized. Well, it's the same thing as the occult, right? Same thing. Learning about the elements, the planetary forces, learning about your emotions and your mind and the sexual forces and the kundalini and all of your creative power, learning about all of that stuff is demonized because that might actually help make your life better, easier, happier, more fulfilling. Isn't that funny? It's funny. The more I think about that, I think about all of the stuff that would make our lives happier, easier, more fulfilling, interesting. The real things that would do that for us are completely controlled and demonized. I don't know if there's a grand conspiracy or if just humans are afraid of their own happiness and success. I haven't figured that out yet. But tonight, we're going to talk about the power of the mind in bigger ways. Can we affect the physical world around us with our mind? The literal physical world. Does it mean that the physical world is actually within us? Is the power of intention based in our feelings and emotions rather than thought alone? And how do we integrate experiences which we are told are impossible? How do we integrate that into reality, especially if they happen to us and nobody else? How do we even tell that story? More on that to come. More Lighting the Void coming up. We'll keep the phone lines open too, 1-800-588-0335. Stay with us. We'll be right back with our guest. Fringe FM listeners, did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or no Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of the Fringe FM by calling 701-719-3971. No smartphone app or internet needed. Saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Call 701-719-3971. That's 701-719-3971. Listen to the Fringe FM on any phone, anytime, anywhere.
AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. Are you stressed? I mean, who isn't? Anxiety creeping in? No, not that. Is sleep hard to attain because your brain just won't slow down? We're living in crazy times, and the fear knob has been turned up. Okay, there's an answer. Take a big breath, exhale, and go log on to AncientLifeOil.com. CBD, broad and full spectrum, organic and non-GMO CBD for you to enjoy. Change your tune from fear to calm, from brain overload to clear thinking. 0.003 THC on full spectrum and 0% THC on broad spectrum. Competitive pricing with the best quality. Also know everything is going to get better. No worries, be happy. CBD can help calm so your nerves don't think they're a 6-string electric guitar. Enjoy life, smile, and log on to ancientlifeoil.com for great CBD. That's ancientlifeoil.com. You'll be glad you did.
Want to know what's on The Fringe FM? Check out our schedule at thefringe.fm.
Hola, Fringe listeners. This is Dave Cruz of Beyond the Strange, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
This is Malorcas45, fan of The Fringe FM, challenging everyone to open their mind's eye. Listen to Lighting the Void with Joe Roop to gain precision for your third eye vision.
My name is Jake. I'm from Billings, Montana, and I am a void walker.
Hey, Joe Roop. Thanks for lighting the void. This is Janine in the bluegrass of Kentucky, and I am a void walker.
What's up, guys? This is Damien from San Marcos, Texas, and I'm a void walker. I listen to the show to keep myself aligned with the world.
Hi, this is Laura, aka Laura Lavender. I'm from Las Vegas, and I listen to Lighting the Void because it helps me understand some of the strangest experiences I've had. So thanks for all that you do and for always being there for us, Joe.
Hi, this is Kronox from Belgium, and you're listening to Lighting the Void with Joe Roop.
Hey, this is country music singer and void walker Jason Benoit, and when I need my fix on the world of magic and the capabilities of the human consciousness, I listen to Joe Roop right here on Lighting the Void Radio.
Our guest is here with us, Sean McNamara, and we're gonna dive right into this too. But first, let me bring him on and tell you a little bit about him. Also, go to the website for reference. The website is mindpossible.com. Really cool website to visit if you want to check that out too while you're listening to the show. But Sean grew up overseas and was exposed to a variety of spiritual traditions, and early incidents of illness and surgery brought about a persistent fear and contemplation of death and of what happens afterward. And in his 20s, he became a Buddhist practitioner in order to use meditation as a way to investigate the nature of consciousness and reality. Realizing that many traditions eventually become rigid and limiting out of a need for self-preservation and at the cost of each individual's unique development, he left the path he had been following. He found lucid dreaming and the out-of-body experience to be especially potent methods for his spiritual inquiry, and as we do too here on the show, and free of the dogmatic qualities found elsewhere. He eventually applied his knowledge of meditation to telekinesis in order to illustrate the themes of interconnectedness and intention to his meditation studies, and before the epidemic arrived, he taught meditation, remote viewing, lucid dreaming, the out-of-body experience, and telekinesis in Denver, Colorado, with the purpose of showing others that spiritual growth is still possible as an independent, self-empowering, and revelatory path. And now he is the author of The Renegade Mystic, The Pursuit of Spiritual Freedom Through Conscious Exploration, as well as other books on psychic development. Wow, man. Thanks for coming on the broadcast, Sean. It's good to have you.
Thanks, Joe. I'm really excited to be here.
Sounds like you're a natural void walker as it is already. So,
well, I sort of, in a weird way, I think I was just forced into it because of my fear of death. I didn't plan on becoming one, but I just had to do it.
I got to tell you, that's one of the biggest reasons why I got into radio and exploring what I do here too, was not just my fear of death, but also, I started thinking, well, what if I I die alone, right? Like if I'm alone the rest of my life, because that could happen to any of us, and then I die, like if there's nothing after this, this is really going to suck, So, yeah, that's one of the same reasons why I got into it too. But I find it fascinating that you left Buddhism. A lot of people, did you find that too rigid for you?
Well, it's not so much the tradition. I mean, it is a little bit about the tradition, but I ended up studying closely with two teachers. They were both related to the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, which is strongly centered around the guru-disciple principle, in which the guru or the head of the lineage has the power. And I'm just going to generalize here, and I'm going to get to the point. The guru has the power, and a student can't attain enlightenment without the guru's blessing. And the student can progress because they need to get the empowerment, and they need to pay for the expensive retreats and get the more advanced secret practices, and basically bow down and surrender the ego to the guru. And maybe there was a time in history when that model worked, when a guru was someone who could help someone develop themselves and who really had pure intentions. But I found with the two teachers I had, they used that position for power, for sex, for getting their own needs met.
Yeah, what? Amalia from Love, Sex, and the Hidden Agenda spent some time in India, and she became pretty well versed in Hinduism and Buddhism too, and told me the exact same thing, that gurus were doing that stuff even still to this day.
Yeah, so that was a big problem for me. It was, I'm sure many listeners have that experience of someone you trust ends up betraying you in the end. They're not who you thought they were.
Right.
Which in a way is a blessing, because I started to question, what am I doing anyway? I was born into a Catholic family. And in my 20s, I started studying Buddhism because I wanted to find my own way to answer my own questions. And along with turning over my personal power to these teachers, instead of pursuing my specific spiritual question, the question of what happens after we die, I quickly forgot it and decided I'm going to try and be a good Buddhist. And that's a mistake I think anyone can make when they choose their religion or their spiritual path. But then they take on that belief instead of sticking with, what is it you want to find out? What is your main question? What drives you? Because it's so easy to be, you get the books, you get the tradition, you get all the information that you try and memorize, and all the chanting and different kinds of meditation and all these ways of measuring yourself according to their standards. Are you progressing in a certain direction or not? And through all that fog, I abandoned my own individual quest to find out really what happens after I die. And every religion has a belief system that tells you what happens after a person dies, including Buddhism. But I didn't want that. I didn't want to be told what countless generations of practitioners taught or repeated. I wanted experience.
Yeah.
And I thought that meditation in that tradition would help me cross over somehow or gain some insight that I could really hold on to and take as my own, like my own realization. But I didn't. I didn't do it. I just became a pretty good Buddhist, whatever that means. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. I do know what that means. I did the same thing actually left the church and went into the Western mystery traditions, and I became a really good Freemason and a really good this or that, But I still took some of the stuff I learned from all that. But I'm curious to know, before we get into the telekinesis, how did you come to the lucid dreaming and the out of body experience stuff?
Well, so that's what helped me break free. I've been through one teacher and moved to a second teacher, and he ended up being problematic. And that's when I realized this isn't working. So I remembered, I was like, you know what? I haven't figured out what happens after I die. And I know about this thing called the out of body experience. I had tried it briefly when I was a teenager, but I didn't have the discipline to really go for it then. But I thought, I'm going to look into that now. Because I think if I figure this out, how to have an out-of-body experience, then I'll know for sure that some part of me is not physical. And then I can have trust that there's some part of me that will continue after my physical body dies. So while I was still a practicing Buddhist in this community that I've been part of for many years, I started on the side learning how to have an out-of-body experience simply through reading books, which was a huge change of pace, right? Because I didn't need a guru's blessing or anyone's permission. I didn't have to go spend money at some expensive retreat. I just read some books and practice. And then I had my first OBE. And I'll tell you what, two things happened. One was my fear of death was gone in a split second.
Right, yeah.
And the second thing was I realized that I'd given my personal power away to my teacher and that I didn't have to do that anymore. I realized I answered my own question.
Now,
and I'm done putting up with this BS.
Yeah, because a lot of people get into spiritual systems based on what's going to happen to them in the afterlife too, because they're out of fear, you know.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, before the break, you were talking about why, you know, if people they realize their own power, then they won't have to depend on some external system.
Right.
But systems don't want people to discover their own power because then they won't have anyone to control
and boss around. That's right. Yeah,
right.
Basically,
with like, I'll tell you what's going to happen after you die, so be good, you know.
Yeah, like, and I always thought that too. I was thinking, how do you know? You don't know, right? And none of you do. We all came in here in babies as babies, right? And we're all the same animals, the same everything. So you don't know. But when you have an out-of-body experience, you start to get an idea, right? And I wonder if, like, you had kind of the same experience I did. I had mine after reading Robert Monroe's Journeys Out of the Body, and reading your bio there makes me feel like you took the same approach he started to, where it was just a curiosity approach to learning things, but also a methodical, experimental approach too.
Yeah, you know, when I was a teenager and I was trying at that age, it was with Robert Monroe's book, but I didn't succeed at the time. But then in my 20s, I started with William Buellman's books.
Yeah, those are good ones too.
And that was really good because he's got several techniques and he goes into it in detail, which is really helpful. So yeah, I just decided to work on the techniques and just practice so I could get a taste. And it's not that I have all the answers now. I have to say I still don't know what's going to happen to me after I die, but I just know that it's not lights out. It's not nothingness, you know.
Tell me about your first real big out-of-body experience. What happened? Do you remember? You probably do. Of course you do.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's like a living... I find that the memories of my OBs are like memories I have of things that happen while I'm wide awake because it was totally real. My first one was a partial separation, and I was using this technique where I'd get up in the middle of the night and go to another room and either lay on the floor or lay on the couch. And I think this night I'd laid on the couch and done the visualization as my body went back to sleep to keep my mind awake. And suddenly I had the sensations in my body, like the vibrational state and all that. And then I felt myself, my upper half of my body, just sort of float out away from my physical body. I just knew it was happening. But instead of float up into the air, which is what most people imagine if they haven't had one, I sank down to the ground and I started stretching across the living room floor. And I felt like a blob. And it was so funny. I mean, it's funny now. It wasn't funny then, but my legs were stuck in my physical legs. Like the lower half of my body was still stuck.
So like you were hanging like a worm on a fish hook, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. And I realized what was happening, and I knew like I'm over here, but my body's over there. And I was just like, wow. And I think I got so excited that I quickly, just in the blink of an eye, I was back. But without a break in consciousness, I'm back in my body, I'm sitting up, and I feel 1,000 pounds lighter because all the fear I've had all my life was gone. And I was just so happy. And the second one that followed after that went a little further. I left. I was back in the living room. It was in the middle of the night. And this time I ended up just walking down the hallway in my apartment at the time. What was interesting was the hallway in my apartment didn't look the way it does, or the way it did in physical reality. The walls were darker. Things were I made it to the kitchen, and the kitchen looked like it was completely wrecked. And I thought, what is going on here? This isn't how the kitchen looks when I'm in my body. What am I seeing? And I thought, either I'm seeing this building at a different time in history, or what I've really come to believe, because I can't claim to know for sure, is that, when we're having an out-of-body experience, it's not like you can take your eyes and your ears and your skin with you, but your mind has to recreate sensory experience in a way we understand while we're alive. So I'm having an experience out in some non-physical space, and so my mind is trying to, okay, you're in your hallway, but you don't have your eyeballs, so we're going to try and recreate the hallway for you. Or something like that. And it's not always a perfect match,
Yeah. I think sometimes that it gets mixed up with whatever the lucid dreaming realm is. And it does start trying to map things out too, but I don't know, because the out of body experience I had, I saw myself sleeping too. So I was so close to my body in this density that I think I was in kind of that in between locale one where Robert Monroe talks about too. So
yeah, it's tricky, right? You can't, because it's not just one thing. There's that being locale one, and all the others. And there are probably limitless numbers of places we can go and experiences we can have. I've actually had an OBE and a dream, or a lucid dream, at the same time. Because the dream's happening, like my brain must have been in the REM state, and it's producing dream imagery. Meanwhile, some part of my consciousness is somewhere else having an out-of-body experience, but my mind is having both experiences at the same time.
Yeah. Yes.
Which is weird, because I'm getting two images,
Yeah, that is weird. I think that might have happened to me once, kind of like that, but I'm sure, man. Now, have you journaled a lot of your experiences that you've had?
I did, and that's what in the book Renegade Mystic, all the OBE stuff is based off of my journals, which made life easy for me because I could just read what I'd written down over a couple of years. At a certain point, I stopped journaling, and I actually have stopped trying to induce OBEs. That's another story we can talk about later if you want to. But yeah, journaling, I started doing it as a technique to have the experience. The way people journal their dreams to learn how to have lucid dreams, I did journaling to have out-of-body experiences, because journaling is an act of intention. It's an act of provoking the feeling, the desire to want to have that experience. It's a way of getting the subconscious mind on board with what the conscious mind wants to accomplish. And then recording every little thing that happened, because I've found that when I did my training sometimes I'll train in the afternoon. I had a job as a real estate agent, so my time was flexible. Sometimes I'd go home in the afternoon and train. I'd lay down and do the visualization, and I'd either take a nap afterward or just go back to work. But during the afternoon session, sometimes I'd have strange sensations happen in my body, or I'd hear weird sounds. And I made sure to write it down, because if I didn't, I would forget about it. But every little thing that happened, I took as a step towards success. Because trying to have an OBE for some people, definitely for me, is a challenging prospect. It's like trying to do something that no one can really describe adequately. So you don't really know what you're about to experience. So if a person can track every little thing that happens along the way, it builds confidence and familiarity. So for me, journaling everything was part of the training practice.
Yeah, that's why I was asking that, because so a lot of that stuff is in your book, Renegade Mystic. Pretty interesting title for a book too, because it sounds exactly like something that I would say. Like Renegade Mystic means, what does that mean? Does that mean you're not claiming a spiritual system? You're just claiming like you're just trying to find out the truth about everything you talk about, right?
Pretty much. One thing I worried about was using that title. I didn't want people to think I was talking about myself.
Okay.
That title is what I hope people become for themselves by reading the book, that it inspires them to take a mystical approach if they want to, which means being experimental, which means taking a chance, which means trying different things to find the truth that they're looking for, and not just accepting blindly whatever is being given to them or whatever they were born into. Like, ask some questions. Is your religion of birth giving you what you really want, what you're really looking for? Or if, like me, you chose a different path, is that path getting you any closer? And if not, feel free to try again. Feel free to try something new. And the renegade part is really about you're there is a risk there. Some people are going to get upset when they see you walk away. Because if you're part of a group or a spiritual community or a cult, the day you say, I don't really think this is going anywhere, I'm going to go find my own answers, everyone else takes it as a threat because they think that what they're doing is not going anywhere.
Yeah, or wrong or something, right? And it's not even really about right, wrong. You're not going anywhere. It's just about like, I want my own answers, you know?
Exactly. But that's pretty threatening to some people. No one likes the black sheep.
That's right, man.
You stand out, and how dare you, and who do you think you are? And
it don't have to be that way. They make you out to be that way, though, right? Like, it doesn't have to be that way. We could all be renegade mystics, all of us. I think we'd be a better society if we were, actually. But
I think we'd make a lot more progress in terms of what's really going on with reality. I think it could help science. Because there are a lot of scientists out there doing really creative stuff, and they're spiritually inclined, or they're studying consciousness at the same time, and they're realizing some things. People who are into quantum physics, they're realizing that quantum physics and the way consciousness functions have a lot to do with each other. Like with the telekinesis stuff, there's some concepts there that seem related to quantum physics. So in terms of humanity's growth in the next 100 or 1,000 years, I think if we make more discoveries about consciousness, which will require us to break free from tradition, which sets strong limits, it'll actually help us be more creative, be more innovative, help with technology, help with medicine. I think it could help a lot of ways, in practical ways.
I got to tell you, the telekinesis thing, even, the out-of-body experience was something that shook up my paradigm and changed my mind about a lot of things that I didn't believe were possible. But even after that, making reality move or do anything with your physical mind, there's still a lot of doubt in the back of my mind. I mean, that's just programmed there. You know why, right? What, because I kind of want to get into the telekinesis stuff here. So what really convinced you that it was real in your experience?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, because I didn't let myself believe it for a while after I started doing it. I was like, this can't be real. This cannot be happening. It's got to be wind or heat or some mechanical force that's moving this object. It can't be me. But after doing it for a long time, it took me a few months of doing it before allowing myself to believe I was actually doing something. I realized that I could specifically control the motion of the object by how I held my attention and also the way I was breathing. And not that I'm blowing on it, because it's covered by a glass container. So it's not about that. It's anyone who's involved with meditation or yoga or qigong understands that there's a strong relationship between the physical breath and the subtle breath that some people call prana or chi or the life force. So if you breathe a certain way, it changes the flow of energy in the body. And so I learned through experimentation and a lot of accidental stuff that if I breathe a certain way and shift the way I pay attention to my body, it would change the direction that the piece of tinfoil or piece of paper was spinning on the needle. And I could stop it and I could reverse it by how I was relating to myself.
Yeah.
So I realized this is about relationship. I had formed a relationship with this object, and we were entrained in a way so that the way I felt affected the way it moved.
So there is emotions involved with it, for sure. Or
Well,
when you
yeah,
say
emotions
felt,
can
is that what you meant?
Yeah, no, emotions can be part of it, but it's very subtle. It's very subtle because it's also about tuning in to a more relaxed state of mind, like a meditative state of mind. And I'm just talking about the way I do it. I know other people do it differently, but the way I do it is very meditative. So if I'm wide awake and focusing in a strong way, it doesn't work. And then if I get frustrated or impatient and try and push, it definitely doesn't work. But if I start to relax, and you can use feelings of love, or think about someone you care about, or think of a fun memory, or a happy memory, and relax the body and breathe a little more deeply, you shift from the beta wavelength down into alpha. And sometimes I'd shift down into theta, I think, which is meditative, daydreaming. It's a deeper state of mind. And then the object would move. So positive feelings, but mixed in with a deep sense of relaxation, seems to tap into a deeper part of us, a deeper part of the mind. And that's the part of us that can reach out across space and time and affect an object out there, or affect another person, probably. So there's that us, the personality that's on the very surface, the part that goes to work every day, that screams at the other driver in traffic, the one who's buying the groceries in the store. That conscious person is not really that's not the part of us that does the telekinesis. It's the deeper aspect of us.
Or what maybe some people call your higher self, or whatever, something, that thing that's always talking to you. Is that what I wish I know what you're talking about, but I wish I could explain it too. And I've done a lot of breath meditations, like pranayama, fourfold breath, stuff like that, where you do tap into the subtle being of who you are, really, but you can't explain it. It's cool hearing you talk about it.
Well, yeah, it is really hard to put into words exactly, but it's like there are things in life that touch onto it. Something that happened a few times accidentally that helped me figure out how to do it was that I'd sit there in front of this thing, trying to make it move. I'd sit there for a half hour and 45 minutes and an hour, and nothing would happen. And then I would start falling asleep while I'm sitting there and start having these little dreams, little dreamlets, like when you're just,
right.
If you've ever been stuck somewhere
and you're having a hypnagogic dream.
Exactly. And that is when it would start to move. When my ego had checked out and I started having these little dreams and I'm fading out, that's when it would start to move. Another time it started to move was I would be trying really hard, again, for a half hour, 45 minutes. And then I would give up. I'd be like, okay, I'm done. And as soon as I did that, and it was a mental process of saying, I'm done for the day, that's when it would start moving. So It was when I let go is when it happened.
Okay. All right. So that's fascinating too. We're at the top of the hour here. I want to dig into that a little deeper too. We'll be right back with our guest, Sean McNamara. We got to take a break here though. 1-800-588-0335 is the call-in number too. You can go to the website, mindpossible.com. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey, this is No Way Jose, a Northern California Piscean stuck in the Arizona desert. I'm a void walker, and I got the shoes to prove it. So what do I do when my soul yearns to delve deep into the realm of the unknown? I aim my satellite straight into the night sky and catch a smooth ride on the KTLK-DB radio waves. I tune into Lighting the Void with Joe Root on the Fringe FM.
Joe, Lighting the Void is the best show on the planet. This is Barney, your friend from Facebook. Thank you and all the crew for all you do. Namaste, my friend.
This is Macon from the foothills of North Carolina, and I am a void walker.
G'day, void walkers. This is Lily from down under Australia. The world may be small, the enigma is greater. So let your curiosity take you for a journey with Joe Root.
Hey, this is V, coming in from Central Maryland, and I am a void walker.
This is Kevin Doherty, a beginner void walker. I'm from Vancouver, BC. I know a little about a lot, and as Leonard Skinner said, I guess the rest. I learned a lot from Mr. Root in the show, and I heard it from the beginning. I knew right then he was going to be a new art pal. Thanks for all your shows, and keep it up.
Hey, this is Derek from Mass, aka the Night Stalker, and I'm a void walker.
This is Mark from Chicago, and I walk the void to ascertain what is consciousness.
My name is Jared Johnson, and I'm from Humboldt County, California. I do not know all the answers to the questions about reality. I do not claim to know the ultimate truth about life. I seek that which has been made hidden as a part of a family of explorers of consciousness. I'm a void walker. Thanks, Joru.
This is Barbara Charlton from Metaphorical Archaeology. If you've ever had a traumatic paranormal experience, the effects of it may stay with you for years. Who do you talk to? You can't go to conventional help. What we do is we use emotional freedom techniques or tapping to actually neutralize the effects of that event. Maybe when you tell the story now, your heart races and your palms get sweaty. You don't even want to think about it because you don't know how to neutralize that. That's what EFT tapping does. It neutralizes those emotions. The circuit that was recorded on is gone. The energy flows freely and you're free of it. And that's what emotional freedom is all about. We offer this as a pro bono service, but this is something that I offer because no one, it seems, is helping people with these experiences. If you'd like to reach me, it's really easy. My cell phone is 214-995-3754. Please leave a message. I will get back to you as quickly as possible. Or you can email me, barb.eft@gmail.com. And EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques. Reach out to me. It's confidential. This works. You won't believe the results.
Have you heard of heavy metals? Yeah! I'm not talking about the heavy metals in the junkyard. I'm talking about the heavy metals that build up in your body. Heavy metals in your body can make you feel sluggish, fatigued, and just plain off. Why not try Life Change Tea at getthetea.com? Cleansing your body and making you feel great. Cleansing the inside of your body of intruders that sneak their way into you and set up an intruder camp. Life Change Tea helps remove unwanted intruder camps. Brew it, steep it, and drink in the results. Tastes great, so you can create a new health habit. Our tea loves to help people. It just needs the chance. So order yours today by logging on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Our Life Change Super Strength Tea is waiting. This could be a beautiful relationship. Take charge of your health. Order at getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com.
The Fringe FM isn't just a radio station. We also provide services for all your audio production needs. If you're interested in live radio or pre-recorded podcasts, we're here to help. We even do audio enhancements and voiceovers if needed. If you want to do a podcast or live radio show and even want the option to syndicate on terrestrial radio, from simple audio file enhancement to live production and call screening, we have you covered. We have worked with some of the best professionals in the business in order to provide coaching instruction for content creation, show structure, and more. Contact The Fringe Digital Media for more at info@thefringe.fm. That's info@thefringe.fm. Or call 501-777-5631 for a consultation.
From the Kingdom of Arkansas, you are listening to Joe Root and Lighting the Void here on the Fringe FM.
back to Lighting the Void. Don't forget, if this is your first time listening to Lighting the Void, you can check the show out live right here on fringe.fm every weeknight, Monday through Friday at 9 p.m. Pacific to 11, right after Troubled Minds Radio and before The Secret Teachings with Ryan Gable. Also want to welcome our affiliate KFSA News Talk. And we're talking to Sean tonight. Sean, it's McNamara, right? I'm saying that right. I hope I'm saying that right.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah.
And his website, for reference to, which is a really cool website, is mindpossible.com. And I think where I was getting at earlier before the break, we talked about the out-of-body experience and some of the stuff that's happened to you with that. But in your book, Renegade Mystic, I think telekinesis, there's a lot of doubt around that too. And it kind of reminds me of that movie Phenomena, where you're talking about this kind of agreement or relationship with whatever you're trying to move. Now, when you do these experiments, do you notice that some people can't make them move at all and others can?
Yeah, it's really interesting because before COVID came, I would teach a class about once a month, and I'd have maybe a dozen people in the classroom, 4 people sitting at a table, and each person had their own setup. And I get to know them throughout the class. And the people who had the hardest time were the smartest people in the room. They were like the engineers, the scientists.
The analysts, yeah.
The analysts, because they'd be in that beta wavelength state while they're trying to make it happen. They're trying to figure out, how does this work? How do I do this? They're in that thinking state. And I think in all the times I've taught, only one person has flat out failed completely, and he just wasn't following any of the instructions. But the people who almost didn't succeed were just overthinking it. Meanwhile, the people who were so relaxed and they weren't concerned about trying to prove anything, they did the best. So, I mean, it's kind of, for me, that's a little bit of evidence that you have several people time after time after time that a certain kind of person has a really hard time and another kind of personality does really well.
Yeah, isn't that kind of a crazy metaphor in life too? If you think about it, like, you ever heard that paralysis by analysis? Or they're trying to find a reason for everything, or trying to control everything, or that's what an analysis does. Is it paralyzes you instead of just going with the flow?
Exactly. And, even though I've left formal religion, I think more now than ever, I have a better appreciation of the word faith. Like, as long as that word isn't being used to control people, but the word faith really has that quality of letting go, or at least letting go of ego, or taking a chance, or just go with the flow instead of trying to figure it out or prove it one way or the other.
Right. Taking a chance. But think about what you're saying though. If you think about that with life too, let's look at all the elements here: your career, your desires, your relationships, like everything that you do in life. A lot of times, if you just put that energy towards what you want and then let it go, or you have this like really big feeling that you need to go this way, even if you're scared, and you just do it, everything just kind of works out better, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm so glad you said that, because that's right on point. I think that's the main point of all this stuff. It's not, when I teach a class, they learn to move this little thing with their mind, but that's not the point. It's exactly what you just said. And I've said this to some people in the past. It's like, sometimes this will give you the confidence. If you need, or if you want to start a relationship with someone, this will, it'll take the effort, take the chance, let go. If it's time for divorce and you need to ask for that, maybe that's the leap you need to take, or changing a job, or starting a new career, all of that stuff, instead of being paralyzed by analysis and fear, or thinking that there's something wrong with the situation.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think analysis is fantastic. If you take things from like Robert Monroe's point of view, but he wouldn't get he would do experiments and stuff with the out-of-body experience and everything. He would analyze what happened and then put the controls and variables. But he was really good at letting go too. Like, and then in his second book, he talked about that as well, about these 3 different categories of things, and letting go the things that you can't control, or knowing that you're being led somewhere. That kind of stuff was one of the biggest keys to happiness and a successful life. And you're relating that to what's called faith. And I also found in magic, or if you want to call it magic manifestation, that if you look at faith in that sense, instead of trying to give it to a God with a name, but if you look at it in that sense, it always seems to work out better.
Mm-hmm. And I think you're right, and Monroe's right, that these are all different parts of ourselves, and we need them all to be whole. We need to be able to think logically, to analyze things, and also to let go. And there's a time and place for each one of those, and then we pull them all together. Because I think in modern society, we've gone too far in one direction. We're all being trained to just be consumers, and we've forgotten how to be void walkers, right? Like to be cued in or tuned into our deeper selves. I think a lot of modern society has just forgotten that part of ourselves.
Absolutely,
and it needs to come back, because we're deeply unhappy right now, I think. Because we're disconnected.
Well, when you have a successful out of body experience too, that also kind of happens, right? Like you have to kind of go with what's happening instead of fighting it or letting fear take over or trying to analyze something too. There's some kind of that place, especially when you're out of body, reacts very subtly to these things or emotions and stuff. You just kind of got to go with it a little bit.
Oh yeah. I found that, when I first started having them, I would try and control them. And so I had these, they were cool at the time, but looking back, they're kind of boring, where I'm just hanging around the apartment or outside. But when I realized I should let go and let my higher self take the steering wheel, then the experiences went to a whole other level that was more spiritual or more fulfilling, had something to teach me. So they were more valuable and enriching that way. When I let go of control and let something else decide for me what I was supposed to experience. So, and when I would come back, I would feel more whole. And I don't even want to say happy, it goes above happiness, but just I felt complete as a person. For a few days, it would last, that feeling. I'd come back and then I'd go to bed and I just couldn't sleep because I was just complete, and I couldn't even black out into sleep because I felt so good. I felt like I'd reconnected with the deepest part of me, whatever that is. Use the word soul or spirit or whatever, but I was back in touch with myself, and it's so sad that most of the time I walk around and I'm disconnected again.
Yeah, I've actually learned that over the past year or two, is that my mind creates. The mind can create some really negative emotions too, right? But it can also create really good things. It's so powerful. But the real power is, I think, is the faith part of it, the letting go, like you're talking about. And that, so I'm curious on these telekinesis experiments, and you guys can watch the YouTube video if you go to, you have two different YouTube channels, right? One is about conscious exploration, and the other one's about telekinesis, right?
Mm-hmm. But the best way, if they go to my main site, the mindpossible.com, there's a telekinesis page, and there's a link on it that takes them straight to the very best telekinesis videos I have. It's like a selection there.
Okay.
So that'll just get them quickly to what they want to look at.
So if you go to this, you'll see people actually moving objects inside this glass, and he's instructing them how to do it. Not only that, I was watching the documentary on it where they were trying everything. Well, maybe I should take my hands off the glass. Maybe there's heat and people were trying to blow on it to make sure. But the one person I saw on the left side of the table that was just kind of giving into it was actually, she was like moving her hands to the left and to the right, and it would swirl one way and then swirl back the other way. And I was thinking, wow, like she's really tapped into it. So I'm curious, what is one of the biggest things that you've seen, like physically, that gets moved? Other than that, I know we're probably not as humans at that point where we can like do Jedi stuff and move mountains, but how big has it gotten?
I stopped pretty soon after, I think for me, there's a can that I moved balanced on top of a needle. but that's still pretty light. I've seen, there are these videos on YouTube of a Russian mystic named Nina Kulagina from Russia. This was during the Cold War. And in these videos, you see her, she's sitting down at a table, and there's a plexiglass container in front of her. And there's a couple of salt shakers or salt and pepper shaker and some toothpicks and some other stuff. And she's moving this stuff across the surface of the table. The reason I do stuff balanced on a needle is because there's very little friction, so it makes it really easy. So the kind of telekinesis I do is what anyone can do. It's very easy. But what she could do was tremendous. But when she would do it, she would spend 8 hours preparing herself and working herself up. And they would weigh her. So she would do this with scientists in Russia, and they would weigh her before and after an 8-hour session. And she would have lost pounds of weight in one day from all the huffing and puffing and breathing and concentrating and forcing that she was doing. And she actually ended up, if I remember right, she died of a heart attack. And then a few years or a couple of years after I was getting into this, I saw on Facebook or YouTube this page for this guy named Fadi Mir from Turkey. So I couldn't understand what he was saying. He was only speaking Turkish. But he's the kind of guy, he could stand up a box of, like a cigarette box on a table, stand across the room, and he'd be focusing and straining really hard, and he'd make that thing fall over.
Wow. Yeah.
And this guy, I think he was in his late 20s, maybe early 30s. And I noticed after a while he wasn't posting anything new. And I started trying to translate. All the comments were in Turkish, but it looks like he died and had an aneurysm at the same time or something like that happened. But he died.
Man.
And so that's why I don't try and do heavy stuff. That's why I stopped after a while, because my heart center started aching a lot. And I had heart surgery when I was in my early 20s. So I'm sensitive. I'm not interested. It's not worth it to me to try and move something bigger just to prove it to someone and then have a heart attack. Because if the energy centers in the body are involved somehow, and that's still a question, I think, but if they are involved, then maybe the heart center or the heart chakra has something to do with that, with that kind of manifestation or influence. And it just wasn't worth the risk for me. But there are people out there who can do some extraordinary stuff. And I don't know if it's just about how their body is tuned or what's going on with their consciousness. I don't know what it is. But it's really interesting. One reason I started teaching it was because after I had my OBE, I realized I couldn't really show someone what an OBE was, but you could show someone telekinesis in broad daylight, and that would show them that the humans are pretty cool. We're special. We have these abilities, and we have our non-physical aspect to us. And I really hoped it would help people tune into their spiritual natures and bring out their better qualities. And it's funny because, I'm looking at the Fringe FM website, and there's this quote: if we were Jedis, there's 100% chance we would use the Force inappropriately.
That's right. Yeah.
And I love it because, sadly, what I found out after a few years of teaching this stuff is teaching it to someone who's a naturally empathetic, generous, loving person will just expand those qualities for them, which is wonderful. But if someone's kind of an egotistical jerk,
yeah, right,
or they have a behavioral issue, or a personality disorder or something like that, all it's going to do is make their ego bigger. It doesn't actually turn them into more generous, loving, compassionate people. It doesn't do it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Very interesting. Well, we try to put a new quote up there a week just to make people laugh, but yeah, look, NLP, I was talking about NLP because I was thinking about Jedi stuff too. Like, NLP is a real thing. There's people that are really good at it that use it. You can use that for light and dark too. You can use NLP to practically fix yourself emotionally and make your brain think positive and happy and fix a lot of trauma in your life. But you can also use it to influence and manipulate others, right? So That's another thing too about a lot of this stuff. I think the reason why they keep a lot of these things hidden and they want these systems of spiritual attainment, things like that, is so that they can control the enlightenment of the individual. I'm not saying all systems are that way. There's a lot of mystery schools that continue to let you go on your own path, right? But those schools, especially, like some of the systems of magic and stuff, are looked down upon by society massively. But when you get into the systems, it's all about learning the stuff you're talking about, just in different ways, you know?
Yeah, and unfortunately, you really can't control like what a person does with it. So you got to trust that people are generally good, and then there's a few rotten apples out there who might use it for other purposes. You know, it's tough to, who's to say? You know, I guess if there's some organizations or groups out there who will they'll try and say who can do this and who can't. But what gives them how do you evaluate? You know, what if the person all the way at the top? What if they're crooked?
So
what if they feel threatened by people on the lower ranks who can do stuff that they can't do?
Yeah, exactly. So I want to get back to what you were talking about with the telekinesis too. Did you instruct people? And I'm asking this for the reasons why we were just talking about. Well, I'll just tell you this, preface the question before this. At the beginning of the show, I talked about the occult forces, and these things you learn about your desire, your intellect, your emotions, and the will, and stuff like that, right? Which is the microcosmic star, if you've studied Western magic. And then you learn about planetary forces. And then as you get higher, you learn about the desire bodies or fire or Christos in you of the sexual forces, which is basically just desire in a higher sense of the word, or darker, I guess, depending on how you use it. Now, I heard you say something earlier, too, about thinking about a person. You said, think about a person that you really care about or something, or think about, you were having your students think about certain things. I wonder how desire or the will or anything affects that. Like, is it, if I think about somebody I really, really like, and then I'm able to get into that meditative state, does it make it move easier? If that makes any sense. Because I'm trying to figure out which one of these forces works better, actually, or has more amplification.
Yeah. Well, that's a really great question. It's really juicy. In the movie that you mentioned earlier that I was in, it's called Superhuman, The Invisible Made Visible. There's really quickly in there, you see the object in front of me that I'm working on. It starts to spin a lot faster. And I don't remember if they caught it on film or not. But what I told them was, just before that happened, I started thinking about my wife and how much I love my wife.
Right.
And when I felt that, that's when the object started moving a lot faster. And so I would do that in the classroom. I'd tell people, think of your kids, or think of, if you have a dog, everyone loves their dog or their cat. Think about your pet. And when they would bring about these loving feelings, then the object would start responding a lot more. Now, but I think there are two aspects to that. One is it the force of that warm, loving feeling, or is it that kind of warm, loving feeling helps a person concentrate more in a certain way, or does it concentrate the mind? Does it concentrate the energy? Is it just a concentrating force, or is it both?
I think it could be both, because love is a peaceful force, but also a driving force. So it's like one of the only things in the universe that has a driving force that doesn't cause instability, but peace at the same time. Which could be an entirely type of different energy that we don't fully understand yet, you know?
Yeah. What if it and I'm just kind of making a joke. What if gravity is love? What if that's what holds planets and stars in a certain pattern together, that holds them together? What if that's some weird primordial form of love, right?
It could be, because if you think about Interstellar, that movie, he kind of hints to that, right? Because there's this driving thing where he's talking about that as well. And then if you read Robert Monroe's books, he talks about the different levels of this louche energy that he talked about, which is love. but the base, what we call love, but based right out of the body at like level 1 or 2, or somewhere around there. He had to learn how to get past the desire of the sexual forces that he said was really magnified in these realms. But as he got into the higher realms, it was something even higher, that there was even like these parasitic things trying to vamp off of it. Or like, I believe what you're saying, that there is this driving force of the universe, what we call love. It could be gravity. It could be interrelated. I think you're onto something with that, actually, intuitively.
Yeah, it was, and if there are more people out there experimenting with this stuff, I think generation after generation will get closer to figuring out what it is. Hopefully, I definitely don't like to pretend I know the answers or what makes all this stuff happen, what causes telekinesis, or what makes it possible. I don't really know, but I think there are little clues here and there, and they're in the heart, they're in the mind, they're in how phenomena responds.
It's in the creative forces too, right? So this is kind of like what the Western mystery traditions knew before Aleister Crowley threw everything for a loop, but also the Eastern people too, and the Tao, like, oh, well, this gendered what we call male and female force. It could be something way bigger in the universe that comes together and it creates, it just creates. And then there's like family love. It's loving your creations too at the same time. So it's something, it's something big, I think. But I also have found like some of the best readers, the best intuitives, the best psychics, the best mystics are some of the most loving ones, are some of the best ones at what they do as well.
Mm-hmm. This is reminding me of there's a teacher out there named Joe Gallenberger. Have you heard of him?
I have had him on the show not too long ago, actually.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, so I won't say anything more, but I've been in Las Vegas with him, and we use that feeling of love, and suddenly the slot machines start responding really well. So it's just another example of that.
Yeah. Do you feel like that there's a resistance to that force too? Like, I know this is a weird question maybe, but I have run into so many things in my life where this force is about to happen, and not just in love, but in other ways that can cause success, abundance, happiness, internal powers, whatever you want to, whatever, all of the above. But it also seems like there's another force out there that tries to stop that stuff from happening in us.
Well, I'm my own worst enemy, so I think I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. Does that force have to do with the mind, I wonder? The analysis by paralysis type thing.
Yeah, like that. Some part of me is used to being small, used to being limited, and used to doubting everything. And it gets a sense of security from that. So in a way, I'm sort of divided within myself. There's this part of me that's limitless and full of love and wants to connect and explore. And this other part of me that's just a total jerk.
Yeah.
That's scared. And I find that every time I'm getting close to discovering something, and definitely with my journey with OBEs and telekinesis and everything, and things beyond that when I would get close to success, I'd suddenly pull back, and I don't know why. And I think it is psychological. I think it's because it's a big change. It is a worldview change to think, to realize that life is not what I've taken it for granted most of my life. It's completely different.
Right.
So I think it can be quite the shock.
Right. Exactly.
It can be quite the shock. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you analyze that shock to death. We gotta take our last break here to call. If you guys want to talk to our guest, if you've had any experiences with telekinesis, have you moved something with your mind or did something you can't quite explain with your mind, you can call in to 1-800-588-0335. You can talk to our guest. We'd love to hear your story. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
love talk radio, then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
The truth is out there, and so are we. KTLK, Digital Broadcasting, The Fringe FM.
Want to support Lighting the Void? Just go to lightingthevoid.com, sign up on our membership page, and pick your package where you can get exclusive content, readings, and exclusive behind-the-scenes content. Also, check out the LTV shop where you can get your very own altar box, t-shirt, shack, hoodie with sigil, Roswell-style t-shirt, racerback tees, socks, long-sleeve shirts, stickers, and beanies. Keep Lighting the Void airing 5 nights a week by going to lightingthevoid.com and support today.
Is that a new music app?
Yeah, check it out. Surfer Music Discovery. It links to thousands of online stations, but the twist is you see the song names and artists that are now playing live.
That's different. No guessing. Looks like a waterfall of music.
So many formats. Rock, oldies, country, R&B, jazz, and a whole lot more.
How's that spelled?
Surfer. S-U-R-F-R.
Is it expensive?
It's free. No need to sign up or sign in.
Get the Surfer Music app free from Google Play or the App Store.
Telepath is a weekly digital newsletter filled with the latest paranormal news, trending topics, and fresh articles from some of the most popular critical thinkers in the community today. Stay informed on your favorite paranormal podcasts and live streaming talk shows. Interact with the Telepath and upload your paranormal story or pics. It could be featured in an upcoming edition. Sign up right now for the free Telepath newsletter at paranormal.radio. That's paranormal.radio.
Lighting the Void and the Esoteric Scholar present the Altar Box, crafted and designed for magicians by magicians. Now you can take your practice with you. This beautifully handcrafted mobile altar opens and works as an altar for any of your spiritual, religious, or ritual practices. Made to travel and work in small spaces, the Altar Box comes with hidden compartments for your practice tools and accessories. The Altar Box also comes with a dark scrying mirror for scrying and reverses and fits perfectly also as a chalkboard for any sigil, symbol, or whatever you see fit to sketch. The Altar Box is handcrafted to carry as a small suitcase, so you may take your practice with you, and the hinges are made with solid material and hinged with leather and rivets for extra strength. The mirror piece and floor plate fit perfectly when closed, so no movement will happen. Use it in small places as well. You can practice meditation, magic, planetary magic, sigil magic, scrying, and ritual. Never be without your practice tools again, no matter the setting or where you go. And this season, give the gift of magic for yourself or your loved one by grabbing your Altar Box. Was $249.99, now $199.99. The sale ends January 1st, 2021. Just go to lightingthevoid.com/altarbox and get yours while the sale lasts.
I don't know all the answers to the questions about reality. I do not claim to know the ultimate truth about life. I seek that which has been made hidden as a part of a family of explorers of consciousness. I am a void walker. Hey, this is Macon, and you're listening to Lighting the Void with Joe Root.
Sean McNamara, our guest tonight. Hey, listen, if you guys want to support the show, you can go to lightingthevoid.com, sign up for our Patreon, or make a one-time donation. Take some of that stimulus money and get the magician's tool get you that altar box you've always wanted. Each one is individually made, handmade for magicians by magicians. Or go grab some Life Change tea and let them say the Fringe FM sent you. Make sure you check that box so Ronnie knows. All right. Our guest tonight is talking about all of my favorite subjects, actually. Sean McNamara. Man, I don't know why, but when I go to say your last name, my brain takes a pause for a second. It just takes.
It just
it's
takes
not
an easy name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a cool last name, though. Mindpossible.com is the website you want to go to. Also, you can grab his book, A Renegade Mystic, and check out his YouTube channels and look at that video. I'm telling you, you guys need to watch that as well. Okay, so, make sure if you want to ask the question to call in to 1-800-588-0335, or if you've had an experience with telekinesis, please call in at 1-800-588-0335. The spoon bending thing is another thing, Sean, that I look at and I'm like, there's a trick to that. I've seen people do like the trick version of it, but there's also a real version of it too, right? I mean, like there's a real way to do that, I would think.
Mm-hmm. And but you're totally right. If you watch someone do it, you can't tell generally if they're doing the magical trick, the illusion, or if they're actually bending the piece of metal, not with their muscles, but with intention or energy or whatever it is that happens behind the scenes, but something else is happening. And people have taken their bent metal to metallurgists and to scientists, and they look at the structure of the metal after it's bent, and they compare it to a piece of metal that was bent by force, and they see that the molecules are structured completely differently. In some cases, it's as if some of the molecules are totally missing, like they're gaps in the metal, like they just were teleported somewhere else. So there is something different happening when someone does psychic spoon bending versus when they're just bending it using muscular force.
Yeah,
they've seen in the microscope something different happens. Yeah.
So before the break, earlier in the show, we talked about your out-of-body experiences, the lucid dreaming, the telekinesis. This is basically all about the human potential that you're talking about, being the renegade mystic here. I wonder, though, and spoon bending, earlier you said that the people that could move things with their mind weren't the ones that didn't analyze things and just kind of gave into this energy. And then you brought up the word faith, which is a better word for faith, that would work for them better. The people that analyze stuff so much it just wouldn't move at all. That's probably the biggest message of the night. And I think literally, metaphorically, there's some real truth to that. But what about the spoon bending?
Well, the same thing happens there too. Like it works better when you do it in groups, and you can tell the people who are overthinking it or they're trying too hard, they can't do it. So everyone's got the same kind of spoon, and half the people can't do it, and they're just overthinking it. And the other half, they totally let go. And the technique I generally teach people, I didn't invent it, but Jack Hawk, he's sort of known as the father of the spoon bending party. He's no longer with us, but Houck, if anyone wants to look him up, Jack Hawk, he was an engineer. I think he worked for the government or NASA or something like that. So very smart guy, but he realized that mental energy and intention can help someone bend metal. And the technique is basically to set your intention and then release it very quickly, usually by shouting bend or melt. But then the third step is to let go completely. So you just get your attention away from the spoon or whatever metal you're using, just forget about it. And then you get this feeling in the back of your mind, like, I should try now. And then you just bend it, and it bends like it's soft plastic instead of like hard metal. And it's very intuitive when you decide to try it. And sometimes it doesn't work right away, and then you have to let go again, just give it a few more moments or even a couple of minutes, and then you try again, and then it goes like butter. I mean, butter's kind of exaggerating, but it's way soft. And I've done this. I've led groups, and we've bent like 1/4-inch thick steel rods. So that's very different from the spoon. And I'm not talking about big muscular guys. I'm talking about average middle-aged women of average muscular capacity bending steel rods.
That's insane.
And, you know, plenty of people, I get emails still from people who watch my spoon bending videos. They follow along because you can replay it as if you were there. And they had their little kids do it. And the kids can bend the spoon, no problem. And kids are great because they're believers and they just go along with it and they're in it for the fun. And a sense of fun is a powerful force in and of itself because you just let go when you're having fun. So the letting go thing is really important with spoon bending too. But just like with the other kind of telekinesis, you can fake it, you can do it as a magic trick, or you can do the real thing. And they look the same. So, you know, when you're doing it, you have to be honest with yourself. Are you trying to fool someone or are you trying to do the real thing?
Yeah, so just to be clear, earlier we were talking about telekinesis. And now he's talking about spoon bending. So I was asking, is it the letting go, the faith thing, right? And then we brought up the metaphors of life, also not analyzing stuff and then going for, like, when you're being told to go for something, just going for it, things seem to kind of happen better. And then I brought up Robert Monroe's book. This is all synchronistic, by the way. I've been talking about this all week. But even in the physical, it's just funny to me, like even in the physical, densest form of the word, telekinesis, people moving these aluminum foil things in circles, spoon bending. You're saying as an instructor, the ones that can just give in and let go are the ones that get the power with this stuff. And I wouldn't even, when I say power, that don't even feel right. It feels like it's something that we naturally have. We're just being limited based on our own, I guess, fears or doubts or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, one thing I kind of have come to is that our physical brain is a filter, right? Especially the conscious part. It filters out most of what we experience so that we can manage, so we can get around in this physical world and interact with others. And so it creates natural limits, which is, you know, it creates our world so we can work with it very well and learn from it. But there's a lot of stuff that's happening that we're not aware of consciously because the brain is a filter. And so if we can let go and relax or have more love or whatever it is, or have faith, maybe that opens up the filter. Maybe the brain relaxes its firm hold on reality, on physical reality, and lets us explore that more vast aspect of the universe and our interconnectedness. So it's like the brain makes us feel more separate from each other, but if we can let go, we realize we're not actually separate from each other or from the physical world, that we are interconnected on a very deep level. But the conscious mind won't show you that. You got to let go and use your heart, or some other part, some deeper part can perceive it. But the ordinary everyday ego, it's not built for that. It can't see it.
Yeah, it's just, it's cool. It's funny to me because on the tree, when I look at the Western system, all of this stuff kind of works, whether it's in the densest form of physical reality or further up in consciousness. I really want to reiterate this too. I keep talking about it, but I want you guys to realize that love, this force of love, you said, when you told people when they were about to move these objects to think about someone that you love or someone that you really like or someone you really love, that it would create more force behind this object, more force to move it. So I know this is an audio show, so essentially I'm going to tell everybody real quick. You would put this needle, the aluminum foil on needle, and then you put glass around it, and then people would even move their hands outside the glass. And some people were really good at it. They could turn it, move it, and others didn't, you know. I just don't want to confuse people about what I'm talking about, but I don't think, honestly, I would be that good at it because I tend to analyze stuff too much, really, you know.
But you know what's great, and another reason that shows it's a real thing is that if you're not great at the beginning, it's a perfect training system. It'll train you into letting go, and you'll be able to tell when you finally let go, because that's when it'll start moving. It's really just a very strange biofeedback device. I think that's another way to describe it. It's just biofeedback or psychofeedback. And so you can learn that you specifically, a person can learn to touch into that deeper aspect of themselves on command by practicing telekinesis. I mean, I had to work at it for a few months before I succeeded the first time. So it wasn't easy for me. But what's interesting, though, is after I figured out how to do it, I showed it to my wife and I said, "Do you want me to teach you how to do this?" Like I was sort of mansplaining. And she said, "No, I'll just sit down." And she said, "No, I'll just do it." And she sat down in front of it and she did it on her very first try. But here's the difference between her and me. Most of her life, she has had dreams and lucid dreams where she's moving objects with her mind in the dream state, which tells me that some part of her was already open to the possibility that this was real. Whereas I had to come at it from the other side and work really hard at it in the awake state until I learned to relax enough to make it happen.
Yeah.
So she was already primed. So any of you out there who are having dreams of having psychic powers, then that's you're one step ahead, or maybe 100 steps ahead, because that deeper part of you is already into it, already knows that it's possible.
I went to this a fair too. I don't know if it was a science fair or not a fair. It was like when I worked at Verizon, we had all these different companies that we were partnered with. They came and showed us their new technology, and they had this machine that where you could move stuff with your mind or whatever, supposedly, and we would put it on our heads. And I remember a lot of people would try it, and the balls wouldn't even move. And I did what you're talking about. I just started I just focused on it and got into like that fourfold breath and let go, just let go, and the thing just shot up. It just went, it was like a ball inside of a cylinder thing, and it just shot straight up. And everybody's like, "Whoa, we ain't seen it move that fast before." And I thought, well, that's weird, because when I watch these commercials, people focus on it and they're shaking their head real hard, but it's kind of the opposite, where you're just
exactly
really letting go.
It's a trick, because they make it seem like it's some sort of challenge or some struggle that you have to overcome, or they can set up where you're competing against someone else, so there's a competitive thing, which is the total opposite state of mind that you need to get into. So you nailed it right away. You figured it out, that you got to go in the other direction and relax and let go, and that's the way in.
Yeah. I have kind of a question I want to ask to this, but I don't know how to. Have you ever asked anybody to think about, when they're about to move the stuff, to think about like how you said you thought about your wife? Well, if you think about
sex, are you asking the sex question?
I was just going to say it, right? Does that force move it faster or no?
I've tried a few experiments, which I won't describe, and they don't seem to make a difference.
So there definitely has. So love is the force, then, right? I would think.
Yeah, more than just the pure sex drive. So being horny doesn't really do anything for you. But
right.
More it's the warmth and sense of connection.
Right.
And for some people, sex has that. So if it has it, that's great. But you can have sex without that too. So
right.
It's the connectedness. I mean, when I teach this in a class, I'll start them off by holding the tinfoil in their hand, and I'll have them feel it, look at the wrinkles and the shapes and the colors. I'll even ask them to taste it, so they can figure out what it's like to be a piece of paper or a piece of tinfoil, to start the relationship. And the whole way through, the way I tell them to use their eyes, the way they look at it, is part of forming the relationship too. Just the way you would look at your newborn baby, or on your wedding day, your spouse, or when one of your parents is dying in the hospital bed, the way you look at them, the last moment, that sense of connection and love. That's how you look at an object if you want to affect it. And I think people at home listening, if you've ever thought about working as an energy healer, or you have someone at home you want to try and do energy work with, look at them with your eyes the way, in a way that expresses that you really love them. And that makes all the difference.
Yeah. Yeah. See, love is that force of, it's like, I know it's kind of corny, right? But Interstellar, when Matthew McConaughey was talking about when he was in the Tesseract, and he was like, the answer is gravity. Well, what if gravity is like a really dense form of love, and it's the one thing that's running the entire universe? That would be a trip, right? And if you died and he's like, oh, that's gravity and love, and that's what was holding everything together and separating it too. Interesting,
Yeah.
I really do have some type of weird intuitive feeling that you're kind of right about that. But obviously, we don't know that to be a fact, but so what are you doing now? Like, what's your next steps with this, or where do you plan on taking your Renegade Mystic experiences to?
I'm not sure yet. I stopped teaching because of COVID, and everything I've taught people is available in the books and the courses, so they don't really need me. And I kind of set it up that way because I didn't want to be anyone's guru or teacher or anything like that. I didn't want to turn this into a thing.
Right.
I just wanted to give people the skills, and they do whatever they want with them, find their own answers. And I'll tell you right now, I'm actually in grad school for a master's in counseling. And it comes back to that issue that you can learn to have psychic abilities and still be a jerk, or having these abilities doesn't necessarily solve all your ordinary problems. It doesn't get to certain things that counseling and therapy can do a lot of help with. So I think I want to help people in a different way now, and I'm studying how to do that. I mean, that's kind of related to why I don't really try to have out-of-body experiences anymore. It's because I realize to train to have one, I need to be in another room at night.
Yeah.
And all that stuff. And I'd rather lay in bed at night with my wife, because I'll be dead someday. I can be non-physical after I'm dead.
Yeah, a long time afterwards, right?
Time afterwards. But right now I've only got, if I'm lucky, 30, 40 years with my wife in our physical bodies. And I want to have my human experience now. Now I'm not scared to death. Now I can live here.
I'm totally with you on that. But let me tell you one step that would even be cooler, right? Is if you had, I'm looking for the wife that will lay next to me and have an out-of-body experience with me in physical, on physical Earth, right? That would be cool,
Yeah.
But most of the time you see these relationships, it's always like one person doing that, and the wife is like, what are you doing? You're silly, or vice versa, right? But is your wife into this stuff at all, though?
She supports me in it. She's not particularly as interested in it as I am, but,
right? Yeah.
But she's totally accepting of it, and she understands the experiences I have once in a while. But what you're talking about is very real. I think with the near-death experiencer community, there's a higher than normal divorce rate after someone has a near-death experience, because their view of existence and life changes so drastically.
I heard that. Yeah, I actually heard
they don't
that before.
fit so well. Yeah, the relationship kind of doesn't. It falls apart, basically.
Yeah, because people are really really, really, really earthly, which isn't a bad thing. But when they're or they have their narratives, or everybody has different narratives and paradigms too on this planet. But as soon as that gets shaken up, it does kind of change your life a little bit too.
Yeah, it can be a radical personality change for some people. Your priorities change. Maybe it's not so much about dying rich anymore, but it's about how we connect with other people before the end.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think what you're doing, regardless of how anybody looks at it, I think what you're doing is really good work. I mean, you're exploring the human potential. You're exploring consciousness, both. I mean, you're a true void walker in every sense of the word, man. Seriously.
Well, I appreciate what you do too, because there was a time on this planet when people like you would be burned at the stake for sharing this information, and now you're helping people get information out far and wide. So it's really important work. So thanks for doing what you do.
Yeah, definitely, man. We'll have to do it again. We'll have to come back and talk a little bit more about it. I'm going to try some of these experiments myself and see if I can get them to work.
Sounds good.
Now, real quick before we let you go, where can everybody grab your book other than mindpossible.com? Do you have it for sale anywhere else?
Oh, yeah. It's on Amazon. You could probably, if you have a local bookstore, they can order it from wherever they order their books from, if it's not Amazon. So they could just look me up by my name, or all the books are listed at mindpossible.com.
Well, thank you for coming on the show and joining us here on the late night. It's good having you.
It's my pleasure. I had such a great time. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. And you guys stay tuned for the Secret Teachings with Ryan Gable. We'll be back tomorrow night with Navia Laura. You guys have a great night. Sweet dreams.